From his $48 million Miami mansion to hell on earth where chaos reigns. Just some of the words used to describe the Metropolitan Detention Center where Sean Diddy Combs.
I've had clients describe MDC as hell, as the worst conditions they've been in.
Sean Diddy Combs lived in a $40 million mansion with gold-plated fixtures and personal chefs. Now he sits in a cramped prison cell where simple necessities feel like luxuries. The hip-hop mogul's life has changed from private jets and red carpets to rigid schedules and prison meals. Guards watch his every move, quite different from his previous life of unlimited freedom and luxury. What a life! Today we'll finally get a glimpse into Diddy's prison life. His situation is evidence of how prison life challenges people more than they expect. Come along. From luxury mansions to prison cell, Diddy now finds himself facing a stark and unforgiving new reality at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. This is a place that former inmates often describe as hell on earth, and it's worlds apart from the life he once lived. It's hard to wrap one's mind around how someone who had everything could end up here, isn't it? Now let's talk about his living conditions. His cell measures a mere 6 feet by 9 feet. It's smaller than most walk-in closets. Inside he has a steel bed frame with a thin, barely there mattress, only about 1.5 inches thick, and no pillow. That's right, no pillow, just a flat surface to rest his head on after a long, grueling day of nothingness. There's also a steel toilet and sink combo, and let's not forget the tiny desk shoved into the corner. That's it. No plush furniture, no elegant drapes, just cold metal and concrete. Diddy, the music mogul who once ruled the charts in the industry, now finds himself living a life so unimaginable that some are calling it worse than a death sentence. From luxury mansions to a cold, unforgiving prison cell, his downfall has been as shocking as it is tragic. But what makes his life behind bars so unbearable? Is it the harsh realities of prison life, or is there something deeper tormenting him? Stick with us, because by the end of this video you'll see the full extent of the agony Diddy is enduring. It's almost surreal to think about how drastically his life has changed. This is someone who once lived in mansions with private chefs whipping up meals on demand, bedrooms the size of football fields, and a full staff attending to his every whim. Now, he has to line up like everyone else just to get his meals, and those meals, while former inmates say the food is barely edible. Reports say he's changed physically too. He looks thinner, visibly thinner as some describe it, and his hair has turned dramatically grayer. It's almost like the weight of this new life is showing up on him in real time. And it doesn't stop there. Because of his celebrity status, Diddy is kept in the Special Housing Unit, also known as SHU, supposedly for his protection. His life there is strictly controlled, with showers only every other day, and phone privileges capped at 300 minutes per month. Then there's his wardrobe, 2 sets of standard prison uniforms, and that's all he gets. Forget the designer suits and custom-made sneakers. Now it's all about scratchy fabric and one size fits all. And if he wants anything extra, he has to buy it from the commissary, which isn't exactly stocked with luxury goods. How does someone used to such a lifestyle cope with such a dramatic shift? It's a question that lingers and makes you wonder how this chapter will change him, if at all. Daily prison routine that broke Diddy. The stark reality of prison life has hit Diddy in ways he probably never imagined, and one of the hardest adjustments has been adapting to a life dictated by an inflexible daily schedule. Imagine going from a world where you call all the shots, deciding when to wake up, when to eat, and how to spend your day, to being told exactly what to do down to the minute. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around, isn't it? For someone who once thrived on spontaneity and the ability to move through life on his own terms, this rigid structure must feel like a cruel kind of culture shock. Let's start with the mornings, which probably feel like the toughest part of the day. At exactly 6 a.m., the silence is shattered by a mandatory wake-up call. No snooze button, no sleeping in. Can you imagine Diddy, who once rolled out of bed whenever he pleased, now forced to get up at the crack of dawn? The first thing on his to-do list isn't anything glamorous, and there's no morning meeting to discuss music deals or a luxurious breakfast spread waiting for him. Instead, he has to make his bed and clean his cell. Yes, the same guy who used to have people to handle every detail of his life now has to mop floors and tidy up his space like it's a military boot camp. The day doesn't get much easier. By 8:30 p.m. the final head count happens, marking the beginning of the end of his day. And no, the lights don't dim until 11 p.m., so he's stuck in this limbo where there's not much to do but wait and endure. It's the kind of routine that doesn't just test patience. It pushes every button of someone used to freedom and luxury. The facility's schedule dictates every aspect of his day. In the morning, he has to focus on the basics: cleaning, mopping, and taking care of personal hygiene. Meals are another story altogether. They happen at fixed times, with food that's a far cry from the gourmet meals he used to post on Instagram. Each bite must remind him of how far his life has shifted. And showers, they're not even a daily luxury, they're scheduled every other day, monitored and rushed. How strange is it to think that something as simple as a shower could feel like a privilege? Let's not forget about the mandatory counts, where inmates are expected to stand completely still and be accounted for multiple times a day. Can you imagine having to pause your life that often just to stand there and be counted? Even phone calls, one of the few ways he can stay connected to the outside world, are strictly limited. He gets just 300 minutes a month to talk to anyone. 300 minutes. That's about 10 minutes a day, and every single conversation is monitored by staff, which means even his words aren't entirely his own. Recreation time is another big adjustment. He gets just 1 hour of recreation a day, confined to a small 500 square foot space. Think about that. 1 hour of freedom in a space that's smaller than the living room of an average house. For someone who used to have the world at his feet, that tiny sliver of time must feel like a cruel joke. But what makes this even harder is the state of the facility itself. The Metropolitan Detention Center has a reputation for being understaffed and overburdened. That means frequent lockdowns, canceled activities, and even stricter restrictions than usual. For someone like Diddy, who once ran massive empires and moved with ease through the upper echelons of society, this kind of confinement is more than just a loss of freedom. It's the complete dismantling of the life he knew. From red carpets to prison yards, Diddy's life has taken a turn so dark that it's hard to believe it's real. His time behind bars is nothing short of a nightmare, with conditions so grim that some say it's like living in hell on earth. But what exactly is making his life so unbearable? Is it the isolation, the loss of power, or something far worse? Stick around, because this deep dive into Diddy's prison life reveals a story that will shock you to your core. The prison diet taking its toll. Prison meals have become a huge adjustment for Diddy at the Metropolitan Detention Center, and honestly, can you imagine what that must feel like? This is someone who used to dine on 5-star meals prepared by personal chefs, savoring the finest cuisines the world has to offer. Now he's dealing with the stark reality of institutional food served on plastic trays. It's like going from a Michelin-starred restaurant to a school cafeteria, except worse, way worse. The daily meal options are exactly what you'd expect in a prison setting. Basic, bland, and nowhere near what anyone would call appetizing. But here's the thing, Diddy isn't even eating the meals. He's been flat out refusing them. Why? Well, can you blame him? The man is worried about his safety. And honestly, doesn't that sound like a valid concern for someone of his stature? Prison consultant Larry Levine pointed out that Diddy might be afraid of getting poisoned, which kind of makes sense. After all, this is Diddy. We're talking about a high-profile celebrity who probably knows a lot about a lot of people. Can you imagine the paranoia? Being in a place where anyone could have it out for you? So instead of eating the prison meals, he's been sticking to commissary items like chips and honey buns. It's not exactly a balanced diet, but at least he feels safer eating those. Of course, this choice is taking a toll on him. 3 months in detention, and he's almost unrecognizable to some. Sure, his legal team insists he's fine, but let's be real. How fine can someone be when they're barely eating real meals? Men's prison meals are supposed to provide about 2,500 calories a day, but since he's avoiding those meals, there's no way he's getting close to that. The weight loss is proof enough. The food situation at the Metropolitan Detention Center has been criticized for years, so Diddy's complaints aren't exactly new. The place is known for its hazardous conditions, and the meals are just another layer of that. But it's gotta be especially hard for someone like him, someone who's lived such a drastically different life before all this. Strict communication restrictions. Communication has become one of the toughest parts of Diddy's life at the Metropolitan Detention Center, and it's almost like his world has shrunk overnight. Imagine being someone who was always connected, juggling multiple businesses and staying in touch with everyone, and then suddenly having all those connections stripped down to the bare minimum. It's not just a change, it's a complete 180, and you can't help but wonder how he's coping. Let's talk about the phone situation first. Diddy, a man who probably lived on his phone 24/7, now gets just 300 minutes a month to talk. That's about 10 minutes a day if he spreads it out evenly. But who's really doing that math when you're desperate to hear familiar voices? If he uses just 30 minutes a day, those minutes are gone in 10 days, leaving him with 20 long silent days. Now, Diddy didn't just sit back and take it. Prosecutors claim he tried to get creative, allegedly arranging for payments through other inmates' commissary accounts so he could use their phone numbers. But you know what happens when you try to work around the rules in a place like that? It backfires. Now his communications are under even tighter surveillance. Every call, every move, it's all being watched. It's like he's in a fishbowl with no room for error. And then there are the visits. You'd think seeing a loved one would be a small comfort, but even that comes with its own set of challenges. First off, he gets just 1 hour a week, that's it. And only one person can visit per day, which means if you're not the chosen one for the week, you're out of luck. The rules are no joke either. Visitors can't bring anything inside, no phones, no watches, nothing. They even have to lock up their personal items in lobby lockers, and don't even think about showing up in sleeveless attire, open-toed shoes, or anything the staff deems provocative. But here's the kicker: every single interaction is monitored. Well, except for conversations with his attorney, but everything else scrutinized. The prison has this advanced AI technology that transcribes calls in real time, flags certain keywords, and even analyzes communication patterns. It's like something out of a spy movie. According to court documents, prosecutors are particularly wary of Diddy trying to use three-way calls to reach potential witnesses. Just the thought of being accused of trying to evade government monitoring adds another layer of pressure to his already limited communications. This is a massive shift for someone like Diddy. Think about it. This is a man who built an empire, someone who thrived on constant connections and endless resources. Now, every phone call, every visit, every letter even has to be carefully planned and followed by strict rules. It's a stark reminder of how drastically life can change. You can't help but wonder, how does someone adjust to that kind of isolation after living such an interconnected life? It's not just about the rules, it's about the mental and emotional toll of knowing your every move is watched and restricted. For Diddy, this must feel like a world that's closing in, one call and one visit at a time. Once a legend in the music world, Diddy's new reality is anything but glamorous. His life in prison is being called worse than a death sentence, and the details are more harrowing than anyone could have expected. From losing his freedom to enduring the harshest of conditions, Diddy's story is a stark reminder of how far one can fall. What makes his situation so unique, and why is it drawing so much attention? So stick around, because this shocking glimpse into Diddy's prison life will leave you reeling. Life without luxury. Life has taken a dramatic turn for Sean Diddy Combs, hasn't it? The man who once lived in luxury and had everything at his fingertips now finds himself adjusting to a starkly different reality at the Metropolitan Detention Center. Can you imagine the shift from million-dollar mansions and lavish dinners to budgeting for commissary items in a prison? It's a whole new world for him, and not in the magical way we think of from that Disney song. Let's talk about the commissary system. At first glance, it might seem like a minor detail, but it's a lifeline for inmates. Diddy, who used to be worth an eye-popping $400 million, now has to follow a strict spending limit of $160 per shop. That's per shop, not per day, and it covers everything from food to hygiene essentials. What can you even get with that amount? Turns out the options are limited, but they include things like Velveeta cheese blocks, tuna pouches, and Spam. Yes, Spam. Imagine going from gourmet meals prepared by personal chefs to squeezing jalapeno cheese out of a tube. If that doesn't drive the reality home, I don't know what does. The real kicker is that most inmates don't even use that small budget on treats or extras. They're focused on essentials. Studies showed that they prioritize things like food and hygiene over luxuries, and for Diddy, who once threw parties costing more than what most people make in a year, it must be surreal. But the adjustment doesn't stop there. Let's get into personal hygiene, shall we? It's another area where the contrast is painfully clear. The commissary offers the basics: toothpaste, deodorant, and maybe some cocoa butter if you're feeling fancy. A 3-pack of Gillette razors costs nearly $10, which is a small fortune for someone relying on a prison job that pays a few cents an hour. Diddy, who likely had a grooming routine involving high-end products and expert barbers, now has to make do with the bare minimum. And here's the thing, the facility hands out 1 free bar of soap a week. That's not nearly enough for most people, so inmates have to dip into their commissary funds just to stay clean. It's no wonder 37% of inmates report struggling with hygiene. It's a real challenge in there. Now let's talk about clothing and bedding, because this is where it really hits home. New inmates are given what they call a standard clothing package. Sounds official, right? It's not. It's 1 shirt, 1 pair of pants, 1 pair of socks, and basic footwear. Diddy, who once had a wardrobe filled with designer brands, is now wearing the same clothes as everyone else. No Gucci, no Prada, just standard issue prison attire. And the bedding? Don't even get me started. Each inmate gets a 1.5-inch thick mattress, 2 blankets, 2 sheets, 2 towels, and 2 washcloths. That's it. Imagine going from a plush, king-size bed with Egyptian cotton sheets to a thin mattress that probably feels like cardboard after a while. And get this, laundry's tightly controlled. Clothes and bedding can only be exchanged once or twice a year. Can you imagine how uncomfortable that must be? Overcrowding and poor cleanliness make it even worse, leading to skin problems and other health issues. For someone like Diddy, who used to sleep in climate-controlled rooms with luxury bedding, this is a daily reminder of how drastically his life has changed. He can't just buy his way into comfort anymore. Every item he has, from a toothbrush to a pair of socks, has to be carefully used and maintained. It's a humbling experience, to say the least, and here's the thing about money in prison, it tells a story. Inmates typically spend about $947 a year on commissary items, which is more than they can earn from prison jobs. Those jobs pay between $180 and $660 annually. Think about that. Even if an inmate works all year, they can't cover their basic needs without help from family or friends on the outside. It's a heavy burden, not just for the inmates, but for their loved ones. And for someone like Diddy, who is used to making millions, this financial dependence must feel like a new kind of imprisonment. So what's the takeaway here? Life in prison is about survival, plain and simple. It's not just about serving time. It's about adapting to a world where every little thing, be it a tube of toothpaste or a bar of soap, has immense value. For Diddy, who once had everything, this new reality must feel like the ultimate culture shock. And honestly, it makes you wonder, how does someone adjust to such a drastic fall from grace? With this, we've come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.